They'd buried him on a Tuesday morning. The casket was closed. Sarah couldn't bring herself to look at what the accident had done to her brother's face. So she said goodbye to the polished mahogany instead, her fingers pressed against the cold wood. "Watch your back." She thought he was joking. Now, standing at the cemetery, watching them lower her baby brother into the ground, those words felt like ice in her veins. And then her phone buzzed. A text message from Michael's number. "I didn't die. Don't trust anyone, especially them." Sarah's knees buckled. The world tilted. Because that was impossible. Michael was dead. She was watching them bury him right now. Wasn't she? What would you do if you got a message from someone you just buried? Where'd you think? Would you believe your eyes or your phone? Would you trust what you're seeing or what you're reading? Because for Sarah Mitchell, that October morning shattered everything she thought she knew about loss, about family, and about truth itself. This is a story about a mistake so profound, so unthinkable, that it destroyed one family's grief and resurrected another's hope. That a story about two young people whose lives became tangled in the worst possible way, about parents who kissed the wrong face goodnight, and about a sister who refused to believe what everyone told her was impossible. What really happened on that highway when Michael Mitchell's van was hit by an out-of-control truck? Why did one family bury an empty promise while another sat bedside with a stranger? And what truth was hiding behind 5 weeks of tears, prayers, and mistaken identity? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about how well you really know the people you love. Before we continue deeper into this story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sarah and Michael Mitchell grew up in a small Michigan town where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Their parents, Robert and Jennifer, had built a comfortable life. Robert worked as an insurance adjuster. Jennifer taught kindergarten. They weren't rich, but they were happy. Michael was the younger of the two kids by 3 years, and from the moment he could walk, he followed Sarah everywhere. She pretended to be annoyed, but secretly she loved it. She loved being the big sister, the protector, the one he looked up to. Michael was one of those kids who lit up every room he entered. Dimples when he smiled. Bright blue eyes that sparkled when he laughed. He played guitar, badly, but with such enthusiasm that people couldn't help but enjoy it anyway. He wanted to be a youth counselor, to help kids who didn't have the stable home he'd been blessed with. "Someone's got to care about the forgotten ones," he'd say, and he meant it with his whole heart. In the fall of 2006, Michael started his sophomore year at Taylor University in Indiana. Small Christian college, tight-knit community, the kind of place where students became family. He loved it there. He called home twice a week, always with some story about his friends, his classes, his growing faith. Sarah had just started her own job as a dental hygienist in Grand Rapids, about 2 hours from home. She and Michael would meet halfway, sometimes for lunch, just to catch up. At their last lunch, 3 weeks before the accident, Michael seemed different, distracted. "You okay?" Sarah asked him, watching him push pasta around his plate. He looked up at her with those blue eyes and smiled, but it didn't reach all the way. "Yeah, just tired. A lot on my mind. School stuff, life stuff," he said, and then he changed the subject. She didn't push. She wishes now that she had. At the same university, in a dorm 2 buildings away from Michael, lived a young woman named Emily Parker. 19 years old, blonde hair usually pulled back in a messy ponytail, studying elementary education. Emily was quieter than Michael, more reserved, but when she smiled, people noticed. She came from a family in Indiana, the Parkers, Donald, Susan, and Emily's older sister Rachel. The Parkers were devoted, faithful people who'd raised their daughters with strong values and stronger faith. Emily had dreams of teaching in underserved communities, of making a difference in small ways that added up to something big. She and Michael knew each other. Not well, but they've been in a few of the same campus ministry events, shared mutual friends, sat in the same section during chapel a few times. On April 26th, both of them, along with 7 other students, piled into a van to head home from a campus service project 15 miles away. It was late afternoon. The sun was setting, painting the Indiana sky in shades of orange and purple. There was laughter in the van, tired but happy voices sharing stories about the day. None of them saw the semi-truck. The driver later said he'd swerved to avoid something in the road. Maybe an animal, maybe nothing. Either way, his truck crossed the median at 65 miles per hour and slammed directly into the passenger side of the van. The sound, witnesses said, was like thunder and screaming metal all at once. The van crumpled like paper. Glass exploded. Bodies were thrown. And when the dust settled and the first responders arrived, 5 students were dead at the scene. One young woman, unconscious but breathing, was airlifted to the nearest hospital. Her face was badly injured, swollen beyond recognition. But she had a pulse. She was alive. And that, everyone thought, was a miracle. The phone call came to the Mitchell house at 9:47 that night. Robert answered. His face went white as bone. Jennifer knew before he even said the words. "There's been an accident," Robert whispered, and the world stopped spinning. Michael was dead. That's what the authorities told them. He'd been identified at the scene, his wallet found near the wreckage. The impact had been severe. 5 students killed instantly. The Mitchells needed to come to Indiana to make arrangements. Jennifer collapsed, just fell to the floor like her strings had been cut. Sarah, who'd driven home that evening for dinner, felt something inside her crack and shatter. Her baby brother, her Michael, gone, just like that. No warning, no woodbye, no chance to tell him one more time that she loved him. The next 3 days were a blur of horror and numbness. They drove to Indiana. They met with the coroner. They were told, as gently as possible, that viewing the body wasn't recommended. The injuries were too severe. They want to remember Michael as he was. Sarah and her parents agreed. They couldn't bear to see him broken, so they trusted. They signed papers. They arranged for Michael's body to be transported back to Michigan. They planned a funeral. They picked out a casket. Jennifer chose Michael's favorite blue shirt, the one he'd worn to his high school graduation, for him to be buried in. The funeral was held 4 days after the accident. Nearly 1,400 people attended. Friends from high school, from church, from the university. Michael's guitar sat on a stand near the casket, a silent tribute. His best friend from college, Daniel, spoke through tears about Michael's kindness, his faith, his ridiculous sense of humor. He made everyone feel seen, Daniel said, his voice breaking. Like you mattered, like you were worth his time. Sarah couldn't speak. She sat in the front row between her parents, staring at that closed casket, trying to comprehend that her brother was inside it. Her brain couldn't process it. It felt like a terrible dream she couldn't wake up from. They buried Michael in the town's cemetery under an old oak tree. The rain had stopped by then, but the ground was soft and muddy. Sarah threw a handful of dirt onto the casket and whispered, "See you later, little brother." And then they left. They went home. They tried to figure out how to keep breathing in a world without Michael. Meanwhile, 2 hours south in Grand Rapids, another family was living a completely different nightmare. Donald and Susan Parker sat in a hospital room, holding the hand of the young woman they believed was their daughter Emily. She was in a coma. Her face was swollen, bruised, barely recognizable. But it was Emily. It had to be Emily. The authorities had identified her. Her friends from the van had confirmed it before they'd been released from the hospital with minor injuries. Everyone said this was Emily Parker. So the Parkers sat. They prayed. They read scripture aloud. They played her favorite music. They talked to her like she could hear them because the doctors said maybe she could. "Come back to us, sweetheart," Susan whispered every night, stroking the girl's hand. "Please come back." Days turned into weeks. The girl remained in a coma, her condition critical but stable. The Parkers never left her side. Family and friends visited. Emily's sister Rachel came every day after work, sitting quietly, just being present. Emily's boyfriend from campus visited twice, though he seemed uncomfortable, uncertain. He stayed only a few minutes each time. But grief does strange things to people, they reasoned. Everyone processes trauma differently. Sometimes small things seemed off. The girl's hands looked different than Emily's, rougher, the nails shorter. But hands change, don't they? And injuries cause swelling. Susan noticed that the girl seemed taller in the bed than Emily had been, but the doctors said swelling could cause that illusion. Besides, who can trust their perceptions when their world has been shattered? When you're desperate for your child to wake up, you see what you need to see. 5 weeks passed. The Parkers never stopped hoping, praying, believing. And then, one afternoon in late May, the girl opened her eyes. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching" below. Let's see who's truly following till the end. Because what happens next changes everything. When the girl opened her eyes, Susan Parker wept with joy. "Emily," she breathed, squeezing the girl's hand. "Oh, thank God you're awake." But the girl looked confused. She blinked slowly, her eyes trying to focus. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Over the next few days, she began to speak, though her words were slurred, difficult to understand. The doctor said this was normal after such severe trauma. Brain injuries affect speech, memory, cognitive function. It would take time for Emily to fully recover. But something was wrong. The Parkers felt it, but couldn't name it. The girl kept calling them strange things. "False parents," she said once, her voice thick and confused. Donald and Susan exchanged worried glances. "What does that mean?" Donald asked the doctor. "Trauma," the doctor explained. "Brain injury. She's confused. Give her time. Memory will return." But would it? As the girl recovered, slowly regaining strength, learning to walk again with physical therapy, other strange details emerged. She didn't remember things Emily should have remembered. Family vacations. Inside jokes. The name of her childhood dog. It's the injury, the doctors kept saying. Memory loss is common. It may come back. It may not. The Parkers tried to be patient. They tried to trust the process. But late at night, lying in bed, Susan would whisper to Donald, "Does she seem different to you?" And Donald, exhausted from weeks of hospital vigils, would say, "Honey, she almost died. Of course she's different." Back in Michigan, the Mitchell family was drowning in grief. Jennifer couldn't go back to teaching. She'd taken a leave of absence, spending her days in Michael's room, touching his things, crying until she had no tears left. Robert threw himself into work, anything to keep his mind busy, to avoid the crushing weight of his son's absence. Sarah tried to hold everyone together, but she was breaking too. She'd go to work, smile at patients, clean their teeth, and then sit in her car afterward and scream until her throat was raw. 3 weeks after the funeral, Sarah was cleaning out her email when she found a message in her spam folder. It was from Michael's university email address, sent 2 days after his death. Her heart stopped. She almost deleted it, thinking it was some cruel automated message. But something made her click. The email was short. Just one line. "If you get this, call me. Something's wrong. M." Sarah stared at the screen. Her hands started shaking. This was impossible. Michael was dead. She'd watched them lower him into the ground. But the timestamp said this email had been sent at 2:47 a.m., 2 days after the accident, after he was supposed to be dead. Sarah's first thought was that someone had hacked his account, some sick person playing a twisted joke. But then she thought about that last lunch, about how distracted Michael had seemed, about his words, "Watch your back." With trembling fingers, Sarah forwarded the email to her father. Within an hour, Robert was on the phone with the university, demanding answers. Had someone accessed Michael's email account? The IT department checked. No unauthorized access. The email had been sent from Michael's dormitory computer, using his password, which only he knew. "That's impossible," Robert said. "My son is dead." "Sir," the IT specialist said carefully, "I'm just telling you what the logs show." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the funeral, about that closed casket, about how they'd never actually seen Michael's body, about how the authorities had identified him by his wallet, by proximity, by assumption. What if something had gone wrong? What if, in the chaos and horror of that accident, someone had made a mistake? It seemed impossible, ridiculous, the kind of thing that didn't happen in real life. But the email existed, sent after death, and that was impossible too. Sarah started making calls. She contacted the coroner's office in Indiana. She asked questions, lots of questions. How had they identified Michael? By personal effects found at the scene and confirmation from friends who survived the crash, the coroner said. Had they done any other identification? Fingerprints? Dental records? There was a long pause. Ma'am, in a mass casualty event like this, with severe trauma to the bodies, we rely on initial identification. The families were advised not to view the remains due to the extent of injuries. But you didn't verify? Sarah pressed. You didn't actually confirm with dental records, or fingerprints, or DNA? Another pause. Not in every case, no. The families requested closed caskets. The identifications were considered solid based on the information we had. Sarah felt her stomach drop. What if you made a mistake? She whispered. What if you buried the wrong person? The coroner was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Ma'am, I understand you're grieving, but the chances of a mistaken identification in this case are extremely slim. Slim, not impossible. Slim. That word kept Sarah awake for 3 more nights. And then, 6 weeks after the accident, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Indiana, area code. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice asked. Professional. Careful. Yes, who's this? This is Helen Crawford. I'm at the Grant County Coroner's office. Ma'am, I need you to sit down. What Helen Crawford said next shattered reality. Ms. Mitchell, we need to speak with you and your parents as soon as possible. There's been a situation with the identifications from the accident. Sarah's world tilted. What kind of situation? I can't discuss details over the phone, but we need you to provide your brother's dental records immediately. Can you do that? Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. Why? Why do you need his dental records? Helen's voice was gentle but firm. Because the young woman who has been in the hospital for the past 6 weeks, the one everyone believed was Emily Parker, started speaking yesterday. And Ms. Mitchell, she's been saying things. Things that don't match Emily Parker's life. Things that match your brother's life. The phone slipped from Sarah's hand and clattered onto the floor. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her father was suddenly there, picking up the phone, saying hello. Hello. Sarah looked at him, her face white as paper. Dad, she whispered. Dad, they think Michael might be alive. The next 12 hours were chaos. The Mitchells rushed to gather Michael's dental records. They drove through the night to Grand Rapids. The Parkers were called in as well, their world imploding as they learned that the girl they'd been caring for, the daughter they'd been praying over, might not be their daughter at all, might be someone else's child. The dental records confirmed it. The young woman in the hospital bed, the one with the blonde hair and the swollen face, the one who'd been in a coma for 5 weeks, was not Emily Parker. It was Michael Mitchell, alive, broken, but alive. And Emily Parker, the real Emily Parker, the girl with the bright smile and quiet dreams, had died in the crash. She was the one buried in the Mitchell family plot in Michael's favorite blue shirt, under the oak tree in that Michigan cemetery. The hospital room where Michael lay became a place of awkward, painful transition. The Mitchells arrived and saw their son for the first time in 6 weeks. His face was still swollen, still badly scarred from the accident, but it was him. Sarah knew at the moment she saw his hands. Michael had a small scar on his left thumb from a childhood accident with a fishing hook. She'd recognize that scar anywhere. Michael, Jennifer whispered, moving toward the bed. But Michael, still weak, still recovering, looked at these strangers with confusion and fear. He didn't remember the accident, didn't remember much of anything from the past 6 weeks. His brain had been badly injured. The memories were gone, or locked away, or scrambled beyond recognition. The Parkers had to say goodbye to the boy they'd thought was their daughter. Susan Parker, devastated, still stopped by Michael's bed before she left. She squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry we didn't know." Michael, confused, could only stare. He didn't understand what was happening. Didn't understand why these crying people were apologizing to him. The Mitchells had to bury Emily Parker, had to exhume the body from their family plot and hand her over to her real family. Had to watch the Parkers hold a second funeral, this time for the daughter who'd actually died. Sarah attended. She felt she owed Emily that much. She stood in the back of the church and cried for a girl she'd never met, a girl whose death had been hidden under her brother's name. After the service, Rachel Parker approached her, Emily's sister. They looked at each other, Two young women bound by an impossible tragedy. I don't blame you, Rachel said softly. I just wanted you to know that. None of this is anyone's fault. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. But she wasn't sure she believed it. Someone had made a mistake. Someone had looked at Emily's broken body and said, "That's Michael Mitchell." Someone had looked at Michael's broken body and said, "That's Emily Parker." And because of that mistake, two families had lived in opposite nightmares for 6 weeks. How do you forgive that? How do you move forward? Michael Mitchell slowly recovered. It took months. Physical therapy to learn to walk again. Speech therapy to relearn how to form words clearly. Therapy for the trauma, for the scrambled memories, for the psychological weight of knowing you died and came back under someone else's name. He never fully remembered the accident. The doctors said he probably never would. But fragments came back. He remembered the van, laughter, someone singing off-key, and then nothing. Just nothing until he woke up in a hospital bed with people calling him by a name that wasn't his. The hardest part, Michael said later, was accepting that he'd lost 6 weeks of his life. 6 weeks where his family believed he was dead. 6 weeks where he existed as someone else. "I missed my own funeral," he told Sarah once, trying to laugh about it. But the laugh came out broken. Sarah didn't know how to respond. The email, the one that had started her questioning, remained a mystery. The IT department confirmed it had been sent from Michael's computer after the accident. The prevailing theory was that Michael, in the chaos before the crash, had started to write an email, maybe sensing something was wrong, maybe just random student anxiety, and it had sent automatically as part of a delayed send feature or a system glitch. But Sarah wasn't sure. She wanted to believe Michael had somehow known, that some part of him had been trying to reach out, to warn them, to say, "I'm still here." Maybe that was magical thinking. Maybe that was just grief looking for meaning. But she held on to it anyway. The Parkers buried Emily in their family plot in Indiana. The funeral was smaller this time, quieter. The shock had worn off, replaced by a deep, aching sorrow. Emily's dreams of teaching, of helping children, of making small differences that added up to something big, all of it was gone. Donald Parker spoke at the service. His voice was steady, though his hands shook. Emily was kind. He said simply, she saw people, really saw them, and she cared. That's what I want people to remember. Not the confusion of these past weeks. Not the mistake. Just Emily. Just her heart. The two families stayed in contact, bound by the strangest shared experience imaginable. They met for coffee sometimes, the Mitchells and the Parkers, sitting across from each other in quiet restaurants, trying to make sense of what had happened. "Do you ever wonder," Susan Parker asked Jennifer Mitchell one afternoon, "what it all means? Why this happened the way it did?" Jennifer was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think it means we don't know as much as we think we do. We see faces and we assume. We trust what we're told. We believe what makes sense. But sometimes what makes sense is wrong. And we have to learn to live with that." Donald Parker nodded slowly. "I spent 5 weeks loving a boy I thought was my daughter. And you know what? That love was real, even though it was misplaced, even though he wasn't Emily. I loved him because I thought I was loving her. And maybe that's the point. Maybe love doesn't need to be right to be real." The table was quiet. Sarah, sitting next to her mother, felt tears slip down her cheeks. She thought about Emily Parker, buried under her brother's name. About Michael, alive but forever changed. About two families who'd switched grief and hope like some cosmic mistake. And she thought about how fragile truth really is. How easy it is to believe a lie when the lie makes sense. How quick we are to accept what we're told, especially when we're desperate and broken and just need something to hold on to. Michael graduated from college eventually. It took him longer than planned. He had to relearn so much. But he walked across that stage and got his degree in counseling, just like he'd always wanted. He works now with trauma survivors, helping people process grief and loss and the strange, unpredictable nature of tragedy. "I tell them," Michael says, "that sometimes the worst thing isn't what happens to you. It's what people think happened to you. It's living in someone else's story. And the work is figuring out how to claim your own story back. How to say, this is who I am. This is what I survived. This is my truth." Sarah keeps the email. The impossible email sent after death. She has it printed out, framed on her desk. When people ask about it, she tells them the whole story. About the accident, the mistaken identity, the 6 weeks of living in opposite nightmares. And then she says, "It taught me that nothing is certain. Not death, not identity, not even grief. The only thing that's certain is that we have to keep showing up, keep questioning, keep looking for truth even when truth seems impossible. Because sometimes the impossible is just what we haven't understood yet." The Parkers visit Emily's grave every Sunday. They bring flowers. They talk to her like she's listening. And maybe she is. Maybe somewhere, somehow, Emily Parker knows that she was loved even in death, even in confusion, even when her name was temporarily lost. Maybe that's enough. Rachel Parker, Emily's sister, started a foundation in her sister's memory. It provides scholarships to education students, particularly those who want to teach in underserved areas. Emily's dream carried forward. She didn't get to do it herself, Rachel says. But maybe we can do it for her. Maybe we can make sure other kids get the teacher Emily would have been. And that, perhaps, is the real resurrection. Not Michael waking up in a hospital bed under the wrong name. Not the correction of a terrible mistake. But the way love persists even through death, even through confusion, even through the worst errors human beings can make. The way we insist on meaning even when meaning seems cruel. So let me ask you, what would you have done in Sarah's place? If you got a message from someone you just buried, would you have believed it? Would you have investigated? Or would you have dismissed it as impossible, as grief playing tricks on your mind? And what about the Parkers? 5 weeks of loving someone who wasn't your child. 5 weeks of hope. Would you be angry about that time stolen? Or would you hold on to it as 5 more weeks of love, even if misplaced? How do you measure love? Is it only real when it's directed at the right person? Or is love just love, real regardless of where it lands? These are questions without easy answers, but they're questions worth asking. Because this story, as impossible as it sounds, really happened. 2 families, 1 terrible mistake, and a lesson about how fragile our certainties really are. We think we know. We think we're sure. We think we can trust our eyes, our hearts, our grief. But sometimes we're wrong. And sometimes being wrong costs us everything. Or sometimes being wrong gives us everything back. Michael Mitchell was buried and resurrected. Not in a religious sense, though both families found faith somehow through this ordeal, but in a real, actual, impossible sense. He died on paper. He was mourned. He was buried in absentia. And then he came back, not from the dead, because he was never really dead, but from the assumption of death, from a mistake that said he was gone. How do you come back from that? How do you reclaim a life that everyone thought was over? The answer, Michael would say, is slowly, one day at a time, one memory at a time, one truth at a time, until the story you're living matches the story everyone else is telling about you, until your name belongs to you again. If this story has touched you, if it's made you think about the people you love, the assumptions you make, the certainties you hold, leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me how this story made you feel. Would you want to know if there'd been a mistake? Or would the truth be too painful to bear? And if you're new here, if this is your first time hearing stories like this, stories that challenge what you think you know about life and death and identity, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this. More impossible truths. More lives that defy explanation. More lessons hidden in tragedy. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening to Michael's story and Emily's story, and the story of 2 families who learned that love is stronger than certainty, and hope is more powerful than fact. These things happened. These people are real. Their pain was real. Their hope was real. And their story, impossible as it seems, is true. Remember that the next time you're certain about something, the next time you trust what you're told without question, the next time you assume you know the truth. Because sometimes the truth is stranger than any fiction we could imagine. Sometimes the dead come back, and sometimes the living are buried under someone else's name. Life is fragile. Identity is fragile. Truth is fragile. But love, real love, the kind that persists even through the worst mistakes humanity can make, that love is unbreakable. Hold on to that. Hold on to the people you love. And never, never assume you know everything. Because you don't. None of us do. And that's okay. That's what makes us human. Thank you for watching. Until next time, hold your loved ones close. And maybe, just maybe, check that they're really who you think they are.